Okay, I'm just going to show you how to do my famous bread rolls here. I'm pretty well known for making bread and bread rolls and even dampers as well. And I've had a lot of practice at doing it, so it's quite easy. I've got a few different recipes, and this is basically a version of my old recipe that I've been using for a long time. It's a good recipe to use and good recipe to learn on because it's a very forgiving recipe. I bugger it up all the time and it still comes out pretty good, making me look like an expert, so that's all right, isn't it? I just grabbed the cheapest flour I can get when I'm in the shop. I was passing through Burke and I picked up this brand here. A whole 1 kilo bag. The 10 Darko yeast, which you can find in any supermarket, so we'll get 2 of those sachets and put them on. To that we're going to add some sugar. 4 tablespoons of sugar. That was 4, wasn't it? It doesn't really matter. That's what I mean. This is a pretty forgiving recipe. So you don't get too bananic about it and don't have to worry about it too much at all. Salt. We're going to put in 2, maybe 2 and a bit teaspoons of salt. Anywhere from 2 to 3 is fine. Okay, we've got our dry ingredients in there, so we just need to mix them in a little bit. Give that a bit of a mix in. Good enough for me. Now we want to add some butter. Back to my tablespoon. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter. What's a tablespoon in it? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. 4 very precisely measured tablespoons of butter, as you just saw. Okay, now we're going to mix that butter in to the bread, into the flour. And I'll usually do this by hand. I'm just rubbing this butter in through to the flour. Get it all mixed in there nice and even. And that's at the same time mixing up all my dry ingredients and spreading that yeast around. So I like to do this part pretty thoroughly. All right, so I've got my butter mixed in. I've got all my dry ingredients mixed in. Time to add some water to this recipe. And I don't know how much water I've got in here. This was just randomly put in. And I'm just going to randomly put some in. I'm going to put the water in by feel, basically, not an actual measurement. Now I'm just going to cut it in with my knife to get it reasonably evenly mixed through. So I'm just going to add little bits at a time until it comes together into a ball. A little bit more. That's the beauty of this recipe. If you make it a little bit too wet, that's okay. It'll actually just, might take an extra couple of minutes to cook, but it'll still come out very nice. It's like I say, it's a very, very forgiving recipe. I've done all sorts of terrible things to this recipe while I've been trying to make bread, and it's still come out really good. Right, that's getting fairly evenly mixed. I reckon another little dash might be getting close because there's butter in there. So once I start kneading, that butter will add to the moisture content in. A little bit more, and I reckon I'm on the money there. Right, that should be enough. Yeah, they're starting to pick up and clag up now into a lumpy stuff, so I reckon that's going to come together with a bit of kneading. So I'm just going to lightly dust this board off. And I'm just going to dump that straight over onto there. Start bringing it together. Yeah, that's going pretty good. Now, I've watched a few of those YouTube clips on the inner lines, and all the ones I see tell you that you've got to knead your bread for 15 minutes. Well, I can tell you, this batch here is going to make 16 bread rolls. At times I'm making 150 bread rolls in one hit at a function, and I haven't got time, I can tell you now, to knead every single batch for 15 minutes, so I don't. I make a good knead on this first batch, mix it in nice and thoroughly, and once I know it's all well and truly mixed together, I pretty much call it done. And on the second knead and the third knead, if I do a third, I literally pull it out of the bag, drop it on the table, give it a couple of kneads like this, and put it back in the bag and let it rise again. So there's no 10-15 minutes with this recipe, it happens very quickly. Now I'm just feeling the moisture content on this as I'm kneading it. I'm thinking maybe a little bit dry. I might just add a tiny bit more. It does like to be a little bit wet on the wet side. Right. What I'm going to do with this after I've finished kneading it and getting the mix through, I'm going to drop him in my bowl, and I'm just going to brush the top with a bit of water so it doesn't dry out too much, and that'll help the glad wrap to stick onto the thing as well. And just drape a bit of glad wrap over it, and then that's going to go now over into a warm camp oven for the next hour, and we'll have a look at it now and see how much it's risen. Yeah, the bread rolls, they're pretty spectacular when they come out of the camp oven, that's for sure. If you go camping with some friends and stuff, and you out there making a damper, and they're over there making a damper, and then you all compare dampers, that's not too bad. But when you turn up and dump out a big batch of fresh made bread on the table, yeah, you win. You can't beat it. Okay, well clearly this bread batter is double in size. It was well inside the bowl when I put it in there, and this is the second rise. I've already had it out once, knocked it down and put it back in now and let it rise again. So I've risen it twice now. You can do it 3 times even. It's pretty forgiving. I'm happy to go twice. So now we're going to take the plastic off. Stuck to it a little bit. Remove that. And we're going to see if it's got any stretch. It should be. I like to have them stretched like that. Yep, that's nice and stretchy. When it does that, it always means I make a nice batch of bread rolls, so I'm pretty happy to see that. Okay, we're going to give that a bit of a roll around, not too much. I'm going to cut it in half because this is actually a double batch of bread rolls here that I'm making. Quick knead around. Just want to make sure we knock all the air out of it. That'll do. I need to roll him out now to make a sausage shape so that I can get him evenly cut. Okay, that's pretty even. So now I'm going to choose the halfway mark, and with my fancy not stainless steel dough cutter, I'm going to take him in half. And I'm going to put this one away for a bit later on, and we'll work on this one here. Now we're going to make some bread rolls. There's a little bit of a technique. It's not just a matter of pinching it in a ball and put it in. I have a little method of doing this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make yet another sausage. As even as I can, get my dough cutter. I'm going to choose about the halfway mark in the dough, and I'm going to cut them in half, and then I cut the halves in half. Okay, now the next thing to do is turn them 180 degrees, cut them in half long ways, and that way you get them pretty close normally to being the same size. Okay, even so you always end up with one bigger than the other, that's alright, it doesn't really matter. So we find one, I'll just get a bit more flour on my fingers. Okay, now I'm just going to put some butter in my camp oven, so that makes it nice and slippery for them to come out. I'm just going to wipe it on a bit of paper towel, and this will just help the buns from sticking to the bottom of the camp oven when I go to tip them out. they should just fall straight out without any problem. So pretty liberal lashing of butter there. Beautiful. I can go straight to the fire. Alright. Bread making technique. I'm just going to push them, roll them and tuck them a bit like that. And basically, it doesn't really matter how you go about it. The effect I'm looking for is that tight top. It's been pinched tight there, and underneath it's all bunched up, and that's fine. You don't worry about that, that's where it sits. But this tight top, because as that little roll of dough there rises, it stretches that surface even more, and that's crucial to giving you that beautiful professional bakery looking bread roll touch at the finish. So he goes in the middle, and we'll show you how I'm putting them in there in order in a minute. So basically I pick a smooth surface and I pull it tight so that it's very tight on that top there. Tucked in on there, don't worry about that. Okay, I've got one to go in here. Now what I've done is, pretty much every one of those bread rolls in there you can put your finger around in between them without touching the bread roll. There's a gap in them, but what I'm going to do is let them rise again now, and they'll puff up and touch each other. And once they start touching and get swollen, look about them, that's when I'll start cooking them. And from this point here, I'd estimate about 20 minutes and it'll be ready to cook. So they're put in there in that configuration, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because as they swell and blow up, they'll push against each other and they'll even themselves out and find their own room, and they'll look quite presentable at the end of it. So you don't have to be particular about the gap and the spacing. Just get them in there pretty even and let nature do its course, and it'll take care of itself. Okay, you can see they're puffed up nicely and very swollen looking. So they're ready to cook now, and it's only going to take about 17 minutes to cook. I've got a bit of hot ash mainly underneath here, not much in the way of coals because it'll be too hot. And I'm just going to make this set of bread rolls is going to go all natural, just cook it the way it is, and that set over there I'm going to sprinkle with a cheese topping.
The bread roll, that bread roll technique and method I use of making and that recipe of mine, it's pretty good. It's a pretty tough recipe. You can, it's pretty forgiving. Under pressure, cooking at large functions, I've made my records about 154 bread rolls. But I was cooking 80 kilos of meat and whatever else I was cooking at the same time. So I probably had 25, 30 camp ovens working. So yeah. It's don't be frightened to have a go at making one batch, will you?
Just let me flick the coals off a bit. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good to me. I'll empty this one off. Sit him over there. And I'll just tilt him forward a bit there for a shot so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, that's been cooked on Gidgee coals, and they look like pretty much professional bakery made bread rolls to me. I'm going to have to get them out of this rain though, because it's getting quite heavy. So I'll just put the lid back on that one. Got some cheese rolls under here, cheesy bread rolls. Whack that back on for another couple of minutes and let that brown off a little bit more.